Welcome to the U World Order Showcase Program, the platform dedicated to highlighting visionary entrepreneurs and coaches who are shaping the U World economy. Each week, we're celebrating the power of the individual and coming together to uplift and empower one another to reach new heights of growth and prosperity as we showcase a coach, company, or entrepreneur stepping out to be the change they want to see in the world. With our collective efforts, we're creating a world where every person has the tools to realize their full potential and thrive like never before. Join us today as we chat with this week's guest to learn how they got started, what they're doing, and how they're making a difference in shaping the U World Order.
Hi, and welcome to the U World Order Showcase program. Today, we're talking with Peter. Peter is a Guerrilla software developer, computer systems software designer. He loves creating software for real small businesses and regular people, and he prices them affordably. Help me welcome Peter to the show. Welcome, Peter. It's so nice to meet you. You're the Guerrilla software designer?
Developer.
Developer.
Oh, did I say designer? Software
No,
developer.
I said designer. Tell us about what that means. And what's the difference between a designer and a developer?
Well, the design part means that you're designing the entire system, right? So usually computer programs are a system of programs, right? So somebody has to design the whole thing, come up with the concept, and then you develop the design, and then you actually write the code, right? That it runs on, and then when you have the code developed, it runs on a computer and your application works, right? So like this Zoom meeting that we're having right here, I'd have to come up with an idea, and I say, well, okay, we're going to have two people talking to each other on video, and we're going to have to know what their names are so we can display them on there and all this. You plan out how it should work, and then move forward from there, right? So, and there's a lot, you have to sort of know a lot of the background tools that you're going to need to sort of be able to put it all together, right? Whereas just like a developer or just an entry coder will just have a single task. You'll say, I need you to do this. It's going to look like this, and you have to lay it out exactly for them, and then they can do that task, right? And they'll write the code for it, right? So, but since I don't have any money to pay them with,
It's okay.
Yeah.
Kids happen. Or wives or whatever.
Yeah. So anyhow, where was I?
You were telling me the difference between designers and
just the code
developers.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. So the code is the actual.
So what kinds of programs do you design?
I started out as a business systems analyst for like a company here called a big retailer here called Home Hardware. Okay, so they're a hardware store. They have 1,000 stores across the country, and so they need systems that can track their inventory and the orders that come in from the stores, and be able to pick those orders and get them out of the right truck and stuff like that. So they need a lot of computer systems. So that requires two things, basically, is the user interface, which is the worker's going to work on. We're using a user interface here. And then in the background, you need databases to store all that information, right? And then you need programs to communicate with the database and the user interface and make sure that it all works in the end, and you don't give everything away for free.
Yeah, that would be good.
Stuff like that, right? You have to make sure that it all works right. So that's where I got my systems design experience, right? Is designing systems in that environment. And then once you can do it in one environment, if you can learn, say you want to work in the banking environment, well, then you have to learn about banking, right? But fortunately, you don't have to know everything to design computer systems for people, because you can just interview them. Right? So, and then they can tell you what they need, and if you're good, you can organize everything that they've said, and then you can create for them what it is that they want. So you don't have to have the actual knowledge, but it kind of helps to know the business that you're going to design for, because then it helps you asking the right questions and coming up with the right product the first time, instead of coming up with the wrong product and having to go back.
How did you get into this? I mean,
well, I went to school, out of high school. I went into engineering at Toronto for geological engineering. I was going to be a geologist.
Okay. So this is totally connected.
Which had nothing to do with it. And all the engineers in the University of Toronto had to take an introductory programming course. So we had to take Fortran, and it was done on we were doing it on punch cards. I mean, this is so far back. There weren't any screens.
I remember those days when you faxed things and you had to put the phone down on it, the machine.
Yeah. So you had a big desk-sized typewriting machine, and you would type on that, and that would punch holes in the card, right? And then so one line could fit on one card. One line of code could fit on one card, and then you'd have to put a new card in, and then type your line of code, and then the next card, and then you'd have this big stack of cards, and you take it over to the card reader, and it would read them, and then it would convert them into digital code, and the computer would run, and then the printer would print out your output. Usually this big banging bar
on the big green and white barred paper.
Exactly, right. And then that would come flying out. And to me, that was the best thing I'd ever seen, right? It was like, to me, it was like when I was a kid and I got my first bow and arrow, right? I loved that thing because it could throw the arrow faster and further than I could, right? It was powerful, right? And what I saw when I did my first programming course was that, yeah, it's hard, right, to set up your program, but once you had it right, it could work for 10 iterations, which was nothing, but it could also do 1,000,000, right? And you could just sit back and not do anything. Well, it did 1,000,000 iterations of what you asked it to do, and it won't make a mistake, right? So to me, I was just fascinated by it. I couldn't get enough of it. I would write my own programs. I flunked out all my other courses. Because I was always in the computer room writing code, right? So
right on the forefront of, like, this is all before, like, the in-home computers or laptops.
Yeah, there were no
personal
computers.
There was no, and the computers used to take up a whole building, a big room.
Yeah.
Just to paint the picture for our younger audience that
don't know.
Think that cell phones always existed. Well, really, there was a day when you had to, like, go home and answer your phone.
Exactly.
And listen to your messages.
You missed it, right? So people used to run to get the phone, right? Where now you can't get anybody on the phone anymore because they're just, first of all, it's going to take the message automatically, and they can just text you anyhow and whatever, right? So,
and they're not going to listen to your message either.
Oh, they're just going to throw it out because I got 1,000,000 anyhow, right? And back then, only people you knew called you, right? I mean, it was like
And before the wireless phones, they had the
mhm.
long cords, and you could only go as far
So
as your
far from,
cord.
that's right, everything you got yanked back, right? Yeah, so that's how it all started, was from there. And then I went to University of Waterloo, and they had something really cool. They had a widget, it was called, and it had a screen, and you could work on that, and you didn't have to punch cards, right? You could see a line by line, and it was called a line editor, so you could edit a whole line of code at once, and that was like godsend. And man, things have changed, right? Because back then, and then the personal computer started coming out a few years later, and I remember my sister got her first computer that she was going to set up a word processing business with, right? And it was an IBM personal computer, and it
Your floppy
cost,
disks.
yeah, $10,000, and it didn't even have a hard drive in it.
Right.
Yeah.
These are the little floppy disks.
Yeah.
Putting in and out.
Yeah, and it had what do you call it? A graphics card, which was like super rare. And this
It
graphics
meant
card,
that you didn't have to just have like, it was kind of an orangey yellow and black. It wasn't even like gray and black.
the graphics cards?
No,
Yeah,
with the graphic cards, you actually got graphics.
oh yeah, but it was only you could only get like a couple colors in it back then, right? It was so but yeah,
5 pixels on the
the
whole
command
screen.
line console, you could only, it was green or orange or whatever, right? Was the normal colors for that, or maybe blue, right? So and I remember the debate going on then that graphics cards were a waste of time, and no serious computer person would ever waste their time worrying about graphics, because computers don't do that. They crunch numbers, right? So they were wrong.
I remember back in the day, we had I worked on a joint test project for the Air Force and the Navy, and
Mhm.
I was a data entry person, and I would when we'd get done, some of the other data entry people had entered in some games into the computer system. There was a Star Wars game, but it was just a dot and a couple other dots, and you had to do code in order to get the game
Get it to do anything.
to play.
Yeah. Yeah, and they used to have those when the PCs came out, you started to get those adventure games where you type in the command line, like where it says you've walked into a room and you look around, and then you type in, oh, you look around and you see something in the corner, and so you say walk over to the corner, and then it tells you bend over and pick it up, examine it, right, and stuff like that. And that was a game.
Yeah, that was a game.
And it was
now it's like a movie. You just walk into a movie and you're part of it.
And virtual reality and everything, right? So yeah, so that's how I got into software. And then like I got my after university, and I did work in geology for a while. So I did a number of years in the field, working in the bush up in the Yukon, and which I really liked. It was really nice, but I'm glad I don't do it anymore, because it's like a terrible thing to be older in, I think. Right? Oh, God. Looking at through the mountains.
It's not so bad when you're a kid, but when you get to be like 40 or 50, you really need to have rethought your career choices.
Exactly. So anyhow, I mean, that we had that big recession in the 80s, and 90% of the geology jobs disappeared overnight. And so and then I started teaching at a community college. I could like basic programming, and then I got my first job working for that hardware company as a contractor. I worked for 6 months, and then they liked me, so they hired me full time. And so I learned how to design systems there, and then I still had the bug to go out west. So when I got married, I moved back out west, and I said, look, I've got some work, a project on the books. I'll take it with me, and I'll do it out there, and I'll sell it to you, right? So we had a contract, and I left for Vancouver, and then I worked out there for a while, and I wanted to get out of the mainframe mini computer environment because it was too boring. Right? It was just like banking and and warehouses and stuff like that. And Windows was like cool, right? It had like pictures and you could fonts and all this stuff. And I wanted to do that. So I left there. And then I got a job in Vancouver working for a company that was making a golf simulator game for the Japanese. And that was really cool. Right. So this was something, right? It was like they had this, what do you call it? A whole set, right? Where people would go and they were going to build these centers, and you would go sit in this big booth, and there would be a big projection screen at the back, and they would have a bar and all this stuff. And then you would play this game, and you would actually use real golf clubs and a ball on a tee, and you drive into the net that was in front of the screen, and then the computer would project the trajectory of the ball. I didn't work on the game part. I worked on networking the games together, right? Mm-hmm. So that people could just come in with a swipe card, and then it would say, okay, they've got an account and you're paid this much, and they could go to their booth and they put together their golf team, right? So and then I ran into this guy from UBC that was a software engineer, and he showed me the first internet browser. Right? It was Mosaic, right? With the little green dragon on it and stuff like that. And I just loved it. I thought, oh, look at that, right? There's like, oh, this is computing. So I gotta get into this, right? So then I started to learn about the web and web servers and writing code for that, right? And just kept going from there to here, right? So
what are you doing now?
Well, I I run this foundation called the Guerrilla Software Foundation, which is open source software. So when I need something, I need a tool that the bigger companies have, right, that are too expensive, and I'll put an open source project together, and I'll come up with an alternative and open source it, right, and hopefully get people interested in the project, and they can help me build it, right, and we can work together. And then the other thing that I have is I have this website which is called bitmonkey.com. I don't know if you looked at it or not, right? And that's a project that I've been working on for a long time, right? And what it's developed into is I took the social network idea, and I figured I can write all that stuff. I can do all the stuff that they can do, and I can give it for people to use. And I saw my kids playing these games, right? Warcraft, and they used to play a game called RuneScape, which was hugely popular. And they would earn these tokens in the game, the gold pieces, and that was how they bought their armor and their weapons and their house and everything, right? And they would build entire economies, and then this stuff would spill out into the real world, right? Because kids wanted to have this stuff, so they would go and they would be willing to buy it off of somebody for real money in the real world, right? So which was against the rules in the game, but it went on, and I thought, you know what? you could take a social network and you could do the same thing, right? Build a token into it. So that's what I did. And at first I was, when Bitcoin came along, I thought, oh, I took a look at it and I thought, this is interesting, but it's when I realized what Bitcoin was doing, the hashing and the proof of work, I realized that this is just a big waste of computing energy, right? I mean, all those thousands of computers are just grinding out a hash randomly, hoping to get the right answer. So they're not doing anything useful. And I kind of thought, this isn't going to fly, right? People are going to figure it out and go, it's too.
But no.
Wrong. That certainly did fly. And then I thought, okay, I don't want to run my sort of token forever myself. So I thought I'm going to turn it into a blockchain. And so I minted a token to be the background site. And now I've developed wallets for it, stuff like that. So anybody who has made tokens or ever will make tokens, they can put them on the site and they can take them back off and they can do whatever they want with them. And even if the site goes away, they still will have them, right? So
do they earn tokens in the game, or do they?
Well, yes, they can, right? So if they can take, they can work for other members for the tokens, right? And so some of the members can purchase the rights to their city, and they become the city's tycoon, the owner, right? And so they manage their own city, and so their responsibility is to keep the content relevant to their city, keep the content, they do the moderation, et cetera, like that, or they can get somebody to moderate for them, right? So other members can work for them and earn that way. Members can tip each other, right? So if you like somebody's post, you can tip them with the token and stuff like that. And then if you want to get more views of your post, you can boost your post with the tokens, right? So you can say, I want my post shown more times, and then you buy some extra views with the tokens, right? So it's a real economy, right?
Interesting. I saw somebody else do something like that. It was the Hive or something. I forget the guy's name who was in charge of it. It started out where he was just using money, but then he turned it into crypto.
Mm-hmm.
He put a token behind it, and it was all about, business tools.
Oh.
It was a social site. And do you know what I'm talking about? Have you heard of it?
I've heard of the Hive, but I know that was something. The one that I heard of was they were putting. They had created a JavaScript coin miner for Monero, and people had hijacked it and were injecting it into everybody's websites and everybody's devices and stuff like that. So it got a really bad name, right?
It's totally possible, because I don't think these guys really knew what they were doing, but it was just
so then
another.
That's what the term cryptojacking came along, right? Was that they would hijack your device, and so they kind of ruined that, right? Because it's not a bad idea, right? Is that that as a method of payment, right? When somebody visits your site, you say, okay, when you're visiting my site, you're going to be mining a bit, say 10% of your computing time. And that's going to be your payment. That's a good system, right? But the problem is, because these what do you call it? The Hive script got hijacked and distributed all over the place. All the what do you call it? antiviruses started blocking them, and it created a war against crypto, JavaScript crypto miners, right? So it kind of ruined that, which you can do on my site. But
Yeah, those guys that do the bad things would just focus their efforts on, making the world a better place. How much further ahead would we be? I mean, some of
yeah.
these guys are geniuses.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like the way that people will work on how to abuse your site is stunning. But if you try to ask them to do something useful, they won't do it. Right.
So back to the question again, what are you doing right now? How do you help people? What's the message you want to get out?
Well, right now, the reason that I came out of Lineable, right, is that first of all, like sites like Google and Microsoft, they will not advertise for me. They say, oh, you got user content, blah, 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 blah. They won't let me advertise, right? So I can't use advertising that way, and they won't let me put their ads on their site neither, right? Generate revenue, right? So I have to come up with a creative way of getting the message out there that my site's there, because it just dies off if you don't advertise, right? Because you don't have enough user engagement, right? So I came on. I've started making some tools that people can use to put on their website. So, and most people that have websites these days are small businesses. Mm-hmm. Right? So I've created this thing. It's called the Community Builder, and it's just, you can just put it on your website like the way they put Google Ads, right? You just put a clip of code on there. And then, so instead of that little chat pop-up that everybody's got on their website, it'll pop up your Bitmonkey complete business profile, right? And people can join through that widget, right? And then they become part of your community, and you can have group chats with them, and you can video chat with people through the tool, and you can do everything. And it's all on their own website, right? So that's my sneaky plan.
Actually, it's kind of genius, because right now, most people have to resort to, Facebook groups, because Google groups went away. So if you want to have a group where most people can get together, it's going to be on Facebook, unless you want to go to Discord. But, most people don't really understand how to use Discord. So, yeah, that's a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
So your target market's small businesses.
Yeah.
Or people that are
they can enhance their site with this tool, and then we'll all share the benefits and the users. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them for the first 1,000 people that adopt it and put it on their site, any business that joins underneath them, I'll give them $100 free advertising on, because I have my own advertising network built into the site too, right? So at first, that's not going to be all that great, because I don't have that much of a user base. But if they put it on their site, it's going to grow, right? So then those credits will grow and become more valuable to them later on, right?
That's a really interesting concept. So what do you think your number one struggle is, which I would imagine is marketing?
Marketing, yeah. It's marketing, right? So, and I learned the hard way, right? When the first attempt at building a social network site, I put Google Ads words on it. And I started buying ads. It was AdSense and AdWords, right? So I would buy advertising, and I would put advertising on the site, right? And that took off like gangbusters, right? Like I got like 500,000 users for like about 2 cents each, right? In a few months, right? And then Google went, what? you can't do this. And they made up some excuse why I can't use their services anymore. And then I realized, live by the Google, die by the Google, right? I mean, that's if you build a business that's 100% relying on somebody else's business.
A lot of big businesses out there have learned that lesson. Squidoo and Pinterest.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough.
So that's why I've been busy. Like I built the advertising and my own advertising into the site so that I won't have to go out and get a third party and then listen to all their goofy rules about how things should be done. So
yeah, I know that you can put there's widgets that you can use to put groups on your website. They're often costly and it's kind of difficult to do.
Well, this is super simple, right? And
does it bog down the website? Does it bog down the website? Does the code?
No, because it's not running on their server. It's running on mine, right? It's like it uses right? So it doesn't slow down their server at all. Right? So.
Well, Peter, this has been really an interesting discussion. I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us what you're doing. And
thanks for having me.
you want to share how people can get in touch with you, and I'll be sure and put the links in the description.
Well, I sent you the link. So there's bitmocking.com if they're interested in the site. There's the GitHub link if they're interested, if they're developers and they want to do some coding. There's the GitHub link, and then I've got my LinkedIn one. That's my least favorite one. But anyhow, I got stuff on there, right? So,
Yeah, people can probably find you on LinkedIn easier too. And you're on Alignable.
And I'm on Alignable,
to connect with you.
Yeah, just look for the Guerrilla.
Yeah, I was wondering how that played in. So now it all makes sense.
Yeah. Well, the whole Django thing came from in the beginning, right? When I had all these kids joining that were from Asia, and they were chatting with each other and abusing each other. So I created this policing account called the Site Monkey that would come on and automatically ban them for certain stuff like that, right? And then I just changed it so that it didn't ban them. It just it would block them and then fine them, and they had to pay a fine to come back.
That's a better way.
Which is still there, right? Yeah, exactly. Right. So then if they have to pay the fine a few times, then they learn the lesson, right? So if you ban them, they can
able to access your site.
Yeah. Or you ban them, they'll go and sneak around and find ways to get around your blocks and create another account. But if you just fine them and they want to keep their account, then they can just pay the fine. You make the fine small. And then
some bigger companies might learn that.
Yeah.
Facebook comes to mind. They like to ban people for transgressions. It's just like, well, just let me pay a fine and get back on there.
Yeah, exactly right. And then if you're doing something they don't like, they can fine you again, and you'll learn your lesson, right? It worked great. That was a great idea, right?
That is a really good idea.
And that was why I came up with the idea with people owning their city, was for them to be the ones that were in charge of content for their city, and then because they have an opportunity to make money with it, they're going to do a better job with the moderating, because they're not going to ban everybody because they're like, I'm the moderator and I don't like you, and so-and-so over there slipped me $10 if I ban that guy.
Yeah, which is more likely what's happening.
And that's what happens with moderators, right? So this way I thought, okay, if they have some skin in the game, then they're not going to bother with that stuff. So I really have good moderation that way on my site, right? And the fine system worked worked really good, right? So,
That's very cool.
so it's
Well,
interesting.
Thanks again for joining us.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to the U World Order Showcase program. We hope today's episode has inspired you to consider how you can leverage your unique skills and talents to be the change you want to see in the world. If you're ready to take the next step and turn your passion into a 5-figure part-time business, we invite you to schedule a private consult at heartlifecoach.com. During our Passion to Profit breakthrough session, we'll work together to identify your strengths, clarify your vision, and develop a tailored plan for achieving your goals. Don't settle for mediocrity or let fear hold you back from pursuing your dreams. With the right guidance and support, you can build a thriving business that brings you joy, financial freedom, and the opportunity to make a positive impact in the world. Head over to heartlifecoach.com today to schedule your Passion to Profit breakthrough session and take the first step towards creating the life you've always wanted. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the U World Order Showcase program.